In 1872, a man working at the British Museum made a remarkable discovery. While working on the translation of thousands of text fragments written in the ancient cuneiform system, he discovered a text containing a flood story that was very similar to the story of Noah's Ark that we know from the Bible. So far, nothing spectacular. However, the text that he was deciphering was inscribed into a clay tablet that was at least 1,000 years older than the story that we know from the Bible. So of course this discovery caused some confusion back then, and in a way it still does today. Additionally, this story of the flood is part of a larger ancient story that tells about deep friendship, about a transformation of a person that was described as 2/3 God and 1/3 human. It is about the fear of mortality and the search for meaning in life. It is an ancient epic and it's known by the name Gilgamesh. Quite a fascinating story. The story of Gilgamesh is about 4,000 years old. As always, I love to share with you what I learned about it. But first, welcome back to Bold Books and Bones. Now, how was I made aware of this text? Well, by reading these three remarkable and interconnected books. One is a recent novel, the second is an ancient epic, and the third is an insightful work of non-fiction. And each of them reveals, in their own way, a wonderful and intriguing reflection of what it means to be human. Let's start with the first book. It is a masterful work of storytelling. It is called There Are Rivers in the Sky, and it is written by the Turkish-British novelist Elif Shafak. The story begins from the perspective of a single drop of water tumbling out of the sky, and as we follow its descent towards the earth, we come to realize that every flood, with all its chaos and devastation, begins with just one single drop. The author describes this journey and the whole setting in such a vivid and captivating detail that it feels as if you are falling alongside it and that you are immersed in the beauty and gravity of this small and yet most powerful movement. I was not really surprised by the storytelling skills of the author, because I discovered her work a couple of years ago through my friend Ismail, who generously gifted me one of her previous books called The 40 Rules of Love. And therefore, when I saw her latest work in a bookshop, I bought it blindly, and I'm happy that I did. In many ways, it is a meaningful story for our times. Through it, we are reminded in a powerful way about the importance of water to all living beings on our planet. The story then weaves together the lives of multiple characters, separated by time and space, yet they are bound by their connection to water and by the ancient text called the Epic of Gilgamesh. We meet, for example, a man called Arthur Smith. Okay, remember this name please, because we meet him again later in this episode. But then in the real world. Now this man, rising from poverty and defying all odds, deciphers the ancient cuneiform tablets in the British Museum. And he uncovers the Epic of Gilgamesh that was lost for thousands of years. In Elif Shafak's book, we also learn about King Ashurbanipal, who ruled the Assyrian Empire in the 7th century BCE. He was one of the last great Assyrian kings and is famous for his vast library in the city of Nineveh that is located in the present-day Iraq. This library has preserved many important Mesopotamian texts, including the Epic of Gilgamesh. Therefore, some call King Ashurbanipal the Librarian King. However, it is a title that does not reveal that although he was highly learned and cultured, he also was as cruel as his predecessors. In Elif Shafak's book, we also find the heart-rending story of a Yazidi girl caught in a devastating turmoil of war. And there is Zalika, a highly educated woman living in a houseboat on the River Thames, and she struggles with personal and professional challenges. The story seamlessly shifts between these characters, and as their lives unfold, you gradually uncover the delicately woven connections between their life journeys. To me, this novel reflects in a meaningful way on the interconnectedness of human experiences, even across time and space. The story is not only profound and beautiful, but also nurturing. It felt to me as healthy food for my mind. I listened to it as an audiobook, enjoying very much the warm and captivating voice of the narrator, Olivia Vinal. The main reason why Elif Shafak's book left such a lasting impression on me is its apparent connection to real-world events and histories. In this context, I want to mention my favorite sentence from her book. She writes, "A story is like a flute through which truth blows." And this is exactly how this story felt to me, because many of the things I read in her book felt so real that I found myself looking them up online and in other books. To my delight, at the end of this book, she includes a note to the reader where she shares the sources she used to craft this exceptional story. Not surprisingly, we can learn from it that many elements of the story, along with some of its characters, are drawn from real people and events. And that brought me to this second book. It is called The Buried Book. It was first published in 2007 and was written by David Damrosh, who has an impressive academic career as a professor at the universities of Columbia and Harvard. This book is the perfect match for what I was looking for, because it recounts the true story of the loss and rediscovery of the great epic of Gilgamesh. And through it, we discover the person that Elif Shafak used to base her character Arthur Smith on. His real name is George Smith, and he lived only a short life from 1840 to 1876. And just like in the novel by Elif Shafak, Mr. Smith came from humble beginnings. Through hard work, lucky circumstances, and with the help of kind people, he was given the chance to improve his life, to learn cuneiform and to translate without an academic background the ancient tablets of the British Museum. And somewhere in this book we read about this remarkable moment where it happened, where Mr. Smith was deciphering a tablet and rediscovered that long-lost flood story. This is a beautiful reproduction of the ancient tablet. The original is housed in the British Museum. We know that George Smith was ecstatic when he made this extraordinary discovery. He realized right away the importance of it, and of course it created quite some sensation in scientific and religious circles, because it raised an important question. What does it mean when humanity suddenly discovers a flood story that is strikingly similar to the one in the Bible, but is also much older? What does this mean for how we understand our human history, and how can it help us to deepen our understanding of the book of Genesis in the Bible, specifically Genesis 6 to 9, where we find the flood story of Noah? So if we try to imagine for a moment that it is the year 1872, then therefore the rediscovery of this text was actually part of a larger tapestry of scientific and cultural transformations. For example, around the same period, in 1869, Dmitri Mendeleev published the first periodic table in which he systematically organized the chemical elements, and in this way he revolutionized our understanding of the natural world. Then, in the same context, there were two influential publications. One was in 1859, when Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species. in which he introduced the theory of natural selection, which in turn revolutionized our understanding of the development of life. Then in 1871, Darwin publishes The Descent of Man, exploring human evolution and its connections to natural selection. So this ancient tablet of the flood added another and previously unknown piece to the puzzle of human history. Given all this, it was, to say the least, a time of controversy, a period when groundbreaking scientific discoveries challenged us to reconsider and rewrite our understanding of who we are as humans. The Buried Book provides the context of what we know about the rediscovery of the Epic of Gilgamesh and its story of the flood. And we learn about the key figures like George Smith, but also about Austen Henry Layard and another remarkable man called Hormuzd Rassam, who uncovered during excavations between 1849 and 1851 the extensive library in Nineveh that was once assembled by King Ashurbanipal. This library had been lying there for centuries, buried beneath thick layers of sand and dust. It was a spectacular discovery because they unearthed 3,000 years of history in the cradle of civilization. And among the thousands of cuneiform inscribed tablets was the Epic of Gilgamesh and its flood story, waiting to be revived. It is a true story that feels at times like an Indiana Jones adventure. What I also appreciate in this book is that it presents an honest portrayal of the people involved, with their admirable qualities, but also with their flaws and at times narrow-minded worldviews. And of course, we learn about the ancient epic. Therefore, for me, it was the perfect introduction to this third book, where I could finally read the story of Gilgamesh. Here it is, book 3 in this episode. It is called Gilgamesh, and the subtitle reads A New Translation of the Ancient Epic. It is written by Sophus Helle, who is a writer, translator and cultural historian who was born in Denmark. The opening sentences of the epic are powerful. It goes like this. There was a man who saw the deep, the bedrock of the land, who knew the ways and learned all things. He sought out rulers everywhere and came to grasp all wisdom in the world. He discovered a secret, revealed a hidden matter, and brought home a story from before the flood. This ancient story follows the legendary king Gilgamesh of Uruk, who people describe as 2/3 god and 1/3 human. At first he is a tyrant, but after befriending the wild man Enkidu, he embarks on heroic adventures, defeating monsters like the famous Humbaba and the Bull of Heaven. However, the tragic death of his best friend Enkidu forces Gilgamesh to confront his own mortality. Desperate to find the secret of eternal life, he journeys to Utnapishtim, who is the survivor of the Great Flood. Ultimately, he learns that immortality is reserved only for gods, and that his true legacy lies somewhere else. The epic delves into themes of friendship, power, loss, and the human struggle with mortality. And to my surprise, it does it in a way that you can relate to it, although it is a millennia-old text that preserves just fragments from the deepest layers of human history. It shows once more how little human nature has changed. Our hopes, fears, and search for meaning remain the same, regardless of the time or the culture in which we are born. In this context, it is not surprising that the famous poet Rainer Maria Rilke exclaimed in 1916 that Gilgamesh is tremendous. He even considered it among the greatest things that can happen to a person. Now, I like everything about this book because Sophus Helle provides with this new translation two other valuable things. First, he offers a brief and insightful introduction to the epic and the two languages in which it was preserved, being the Sumerian and Akkadian languages. Although they are linguistically very different, they both used cuneiform script for writing. And the second thing that he provides, besides the translation, are several thoughtful essays that he wrote on the epic. They are reflections on its themes, history and impact, and they offer a deeper insight into the broader world of Gilgamesh. To give you a flavor of how Sophus Helle engages its readers, I share with you the following sentences from his introduction. He writes, "Imagine a novel that came out today being read and appreciated in the year 5120. Our culture will be long gone by then, our digital files corrupted, our paper books crumbled. Will there even be humans in 5120? For a book to survive that long seems almost impossible, but this is the scope of Gilgamesh's triumph. Composed around the 11th century BCE, it has survived 3,000 years of history and may well survive 3,000 more." The author shares here a profound reflection on how some stories can outlive entire civilizations. It reminded me of the famous anthropologist Levi Strauss, who believed that myths never truly die. Instead, he says, they transform over time and across cultures. Reading There Are Rivers in the Sky, The Buried Book and The Epic of Gilgamesh only reinforces this truth. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, then share this content, leave a comment and a thumbs up and subscribe. Whatever happens next in these volatile times, please stay curious and stay free.